So I want to take a minute just to introduce Connections Multiplied 2. The program, Black Women in Nonprofit Leadership, comes out of Connections Multiplied 2. Our mission is all about building an empowered community of leaders of color and providing professional advancement as well as racial healing so that they can make the transformation that they make already in community. It's really important for people to understand that through the programs that are being offered through Connections Multiplied 2, we are building a strong community of leaders. We are building leaders who are going to be equipped professionally, but are also going to be walking a healing journey because we know that we need to be healed in order to be able to serve others. So through Connections Multiplied, we have 4 programs: Black Women in Nonprofit Leadership Cohort, Leadership Connections, which are peer groups, Black Women Leading in Education, and then Uplift as We Climb Fund that is all about building capacity for Black women who are leading in the sector. We want to make sure that everybody knows about the work that we're doing. We want to make sure that organizations understand that this is a place that they are able to send their leaders of color for that opportunity to heal, but also to grow professionally. So thanks so much for getting to know us.
Notes that maybe people don't understand or may not know.
Okay.
And one of them is I recently talked with all of our friends, Dr. Francois, and in that conversation, I discovered that in Texas alone, right, there are about 140,000 nonprofits, okay? And then in Dallas, there are about 17 to 19,000 nonprofits.
Yep.
But out of that entire number, even on a nationwide level, Black women-led nonprofits get not even 1%. I believe it's 0.6% of funding.
Yep.
Which makes it feel almost defeated before you even get started, right? Mm-hmm. So I want you to elaborate on what that experience is and then why you just thought this book was very necessary.
Yeah, so those are statistics. They're very real. It's 67 cents to every $100 that our white counterparts receive. Mm-hmm. And it is tough. We know that we are grasping, right, for every single dollar, and we have to share that dollar amongst our other Black-led organizations. And so it's a challenge, right? And it doesn't stop there. So underfunding is just one of those things, right? Under-resourced is one of those things, meaning the resources that are out in community, including being invited to the table, is one of those places that we're not necessarily invited to even sit at the table. Mm-hmm. But the expectations for the work that we're doing is much higher than those white-led organizations. And so coming in as a Black woman into the sector, one, you have to have really thick skin. And then 2, you have to fight through your passion to be able to do the work and serve your community. And we're about community. In most of those places where we're serving, we're about getting to our Black community, right? We want to be able to get into community to provide food, to provide transportation, to provide education resources for our kids, because in all of those places we are under-resourced, right? When we think about education, think about our kids who are out there, we have to be there for our children, and we're going to do it. And we're going to make our $67 work. We're going to multiply that in some way, which can include inviting other volunteers to be a part of what we're doing, asking for in-kind donations, but we're going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And that's where the book comes from, right? What's the purpose behind it? It's about amplifying our voices. We have a voice. We are the experts, and we're going to talk to you about it. We're going to have a conversation with you about it, about what maybe I've been through. We're going to have a conversation about how you, other Black women who are in the sector, are going to be able to be successful. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that we allow those voices to be heard, and the book is about hearing those voices. The women who participated in the book had something to say, and it was important to me for those voices to be heard. The book actually came as a part of my faith walk, right? Mm-hmm. So God talks to me in the shower on a regular basis, and I was up one morning in the shower, and the idea of a book to be able to really hear the voices of the women who had gone through Black Women in Nonprofit Leadership, the cohort experience. They were giving themselves to be able to heal, to be able to network, to be able to connect, to be able to build on their personal brand, to be able to build their organizations because they were building professionally. And so let's hear their voices and what they have to say as experts in the space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, one thing that we know is that, when the chips are stacked up against you, it is best to have collaboration. One thing that was a through line throughout this book was the word cohort, right? Can you talk to me about the power of collaboration within this book, but then just generally when it comes to Black women in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, so it's interesting when a lot of the women came either into cohort or they were leaving, they were thankful for the space. They were thankful for a space to be able to come together as community to do a few things. One, turn off and not be judged, right? So we're sitting in spaces where we're the only ones. We're sitting in spaces where people have an expectation and we're trying to meet that expectation. And so being able to be vulnerable in that space and ask questions about our success or about moving forward can be a bit of a challenge. And so the cohort experience gave that safe space to say no, to say, I don't know, to say, I'm broken, to say, I'm here to lift you up, to say, I need lifting, to all of those things that we needed, right? Because it's not out in just general community. And so being able to create that cohort experience to create network. So the first group, which is where the book comes from, you know, over 30 women are able to come into a room, walk in and be like, I see you and I see me in you and thank you for being here. Our first cohort actually was virtual. And so it was even fun to be able to see on the screen, but then when we were able to actually be in person, the connection that the women were able to develop then and even now, right? So we are 3 years out and they're still connected. And as we build on more cohorts, that means the network builds, right? So there are more Black women who spent time building on themselves first, but also building that work that then get to expand across the sector, which makes greater impact and makes greater influence. And so these amazing Black women are supporting one another, but then also able to go out and share resources so that they can then thrive, they can build up even greater, because our goal is we're the leaders already. You're looking to us to be able to do the work. We're going to do it, and we're going to come in strong, and we're going to come in united.
Yeah. And in a world that's so individualistic, it's really cool that, you know, you guys are setting the blueprint for it's okay to collaborate and share that success, share space, but also have a safe space, you know, to your point. I wanted to get into the format of the book. So each chapter is led by a quote. Some quotes were picked by the authors, some quotes were picked for the authors. So I wanted to talk about yours in particular. Your quote is, I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own, by Audre Lorde, who's a musician. Can you tell me why that resonates with you so much?
So it's so basic to me, right? If I'm shackled, the woman next to me is shackled, we're not going anywhere. When my shackles come off, I must stay to take the shackles off of the woman next to me. That's what the cohort experience is about, right? Recognizing that we all have these limitations, but as we grow and thrive, supporting one another, building one another, lifting as we're climbing, it is an imperative. And for me, I really am in that space all the time. How do I make Black women better? What do I need to do? What do I need to even sacrifice in that space? Because until we are all paid what we need to be paid, until we are all CEOs, until we are all thriving, I fail. And that's very real. And then women would say that about me as well, that I am about them. I am about how do we make this work? How do we come together? How do we take over the world? How do we do all of those things? Is if I'm not doing that, then I really am a failure.
Well, I mean, I know that you mentioned before multiple cohorts, so just curious, are we going to get a book for every cohort that
So, can we just say to be determined?
Absolutely.
Right now, this is the first one. We're going to make sure that this one is really successful. And yes, there are other women who want to be able to write a book and write a chapter. And so there's some considerations that are there. There's also greater coming. And so we're actually in a place of thinking that there might be an opportunity for a documentary to be able to do some work in that space. And so there's lots of opportunities. We shall see what actually happens. We're going to, be excited about this one for right now. And
so I just have to bring up the fact that before we got started, you were like, I ain't in philanthropy like that. So I was like, okay, but you're in the world of philanthropy. So before we even get into your chapter, I would like for you to talk about what you do that's related to the world of philanthropy.
Okay. So I am the Chief Clinical Officer for Communities and Schools of the Dallas region. They are an organization that's been around, it's a worldwide organization, but specifically the Dallas affiliate has been around since 1985. They exist to surround students with support, whatever that may look like, whether that's basic needs, whether that's attendance, academics, or behavioral needs. And specifically, I lead the mental health department. So right now, I don't know if you noticed, the world is on fire. And our babies are struggling, especially coming out of the pandemic, having to return to school in person. And so what I have the great privilege of doing is providing mental health support across the districts that we are in. So last year we were in 14 school districts, I think 132 schools. And so I got to lead the mental health programming to support the students on those campuses. So that's what I do. Philanthropy supports that.
Gotcha.
So we've got fundraising, we've got grants, we've got TEA support that allows myself and my team to be able to do that work.
I mean, it's cool because you have a unique, different perspective, than the fundraiser when it comes to being in a nonprofit world. Why did you want to be a part of this book? I said what I said.
So at the conclusion of our cohort, we were all having separation anxiety, right? We were already trying to prepare for not being able to meet monthly and not being able to carry what we had learned in that year forward. And so one of the things that we were really excited about is how do we leave a legacy? How do we create space for what we've learned? How do we share this out? How do we have a greater reach besides just the women that are in this room? Like, we all knew that we were going to go back to our respective organizations that we work for, changed for the better, right? We knew we were ready. We were on fire to impact our communities in our respective neck of the woods. But how do we even grow that exponentially? Let's write a book, right? So Erica had the idea for us to all write a chapter to contribute to sharing our part of the stories. What did we learn? What did we take away from the cohort? What did we feel like it was important to put out into the world for not just Black women, but those who support Black women, those that misunderstand Black women, those that want to be allies and understand what we need and the types of hardships that we've had to overcome. I think the book does a lot of truth telling, as far as, kind of raising the veil on some of the harm that Black women experience, not just in the nonprofit sector, but just in being, right? In waking up and taking breath every morning, there's an assault on our physicality. And so wanting folks to know the impact of that, how we've worked through that, and I also let them know we tired.
Yeah.
Right? We are tired from having to zip around with like superwomen in spite of the obstacles that are put in our way. So.
It's funny, you actually kind of lead your chapter talking about presence. It says, lesson 1, you matter in a world that works hard to tell you you don't, you do. And then you went on to talk about things I can resonate with, like being tall, how your family influenced you. Can you speak to identifying that presence in the world?
Yes. So whether or not I wanted to be noticed in the world, I didn't really have a choice. I've been 6 foot tall since I was in the 7th grade, right? I've worn a size 12 shoe since I was in the 7th grade. And so I really appreciate, and I share this in the book, my family's intentionality around like, baby, you're gonna take up space. And so let's talk about how you do that. But I also feel like the world had a counter message, right? And so I kind of walked that line of battling, well, what does it mean to show up as fully me, right? What does it mean to love the fact that I'm tall? What does it mean to embrace the fact that I had big lips before the Kardashians and all the people existed that, made that a market, right? And so I think that as much as my parents tried to instill that in me, I still had a world that I existed in that didn't include them, right, with a lot of counter messages. And so I think that part of why I wanted to share that is for all the other folks who also feel like, I know my family loves me, right? I know that I've been told, that I'm a child of the Most High and that I can do anything and everything that God has created me to be. But I'm going to have elementary school teachers that don't feel that way. I'm going to have coaches that don't feel that way. I'm going to have employers that don't feel that way. And I even talk about the fact that, I'm a psychologist. I have clients that don't feel that way about me as a provider. And so, what does that mean? When people are against you or have negative thoughts about you before you even open up your mouth, how are you firm and solid in who you are and what you bring to the table in spite of all of that? Yeah,
because in this world, nonprofit or just a world of servitude, you have to have good foundation, right? So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
asking everybody this, so I got to ask you about the quote that starts with your chapter. It says, "Self-esteem comes from being able to define the world in your own terms and refusing to abide by the judgment of others." By Miss Oprah Winfrey,
Yeah.
the goddess, if you will. So, how does that quote resonate with you?
Well, so really and truly, it's about not being defined by others. You get to decide who you are in this world, right? I also happen to be a person of Christian faith, and so I also know what the Bible says that I am. And so really trying to walk in that and not letting other people tell me that I need to shrink, tell me that I need to contort. And a lot of it too, I think, even though it's not explicitly stated, it's implicitly implied in cases and in relationships with people in the boardrooms, in meetings, things like that, where it's like, oh, you're a little too loud, or you're a little spicy in the way that you should, those types of things. And how do you get rid of, and I am, how do you get rid of the fact that, like, there's nothing else for me to say after that. I'm not apologetic about it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did that offend you? Oh, and I did that for a long time, and my body, paid the price for that. There were physical challenges that came at the expense of me trying to contort to be what I thought other people needed me to be. And it was so freeing to go through cohort and have that healing experience to know I am fine just the way that I am. And the places and the spaces and the people who are for me love me the way that I am. And so it just really allows me to be connected to who I am, who I want to be, who I want to model for my daughter who's coming behind me, like to say, you are just fine the way that you are, and bump all the folks who think otherwise.
Yeah. All right, Miss Hillary Evans.
Yes.
So nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
So I want to just get right into I said what I said and your contributions. But
great.
before we get into that, you had one of the more thicker chapters in the book.
A lot to say.
So one thing I noticed is that you had specifically 10 lessons. I wanted to know if there was any type of intention with doing 10, like walk me through you creating your chapter.
It created itself, and I found in writing it that it was more like a journal, and noted that I was like, you know what? It seems like, each of these could be its own individual lesson. And so came up with the idea of having 10 lessons, and it just happened to be 10. But it wasn't, I didn't start off intentionally thinking about it in lessons. It was more of getting my story, my life story out there and journey through the nonprofit sector.
And to that point, it looks like you definitely kind of started from the beginning and
Yes.
brought us to the current point. So without going through each of the lessons,
Right.
Is there anything within your nonprofit journey that really stands out as like the light bulb moment, if you will, that changed everything for you?
I think it's probably, the last lesson in terms of that our life's work is, or our story is not over, that we write our story, and that we come into this world already uniquely made and divine, and that our purpose is to live it, and that to be present in the present moment and let your story unfold.
So I've heard from a woman that she did nonprofit work for like 25 years, and she said Black women have been doing philanthropy since our ancestral days.
That's right.
Can you tell me how you feel about that quote, and also tell me how you see the future of Black women in philanthropy?
So philanthropy means love of humanity, and I think that it shows up in terms of our history and culture, that it's inherent in our being, being able to serve. In thinking about my journey into philanthropy, it started out, as being a fundraiser and being on the program side and having to interface with philanthropic leaders, those who were giving out the money. And I noted in looking around the table that no one looked like me, and were not proximate to the issue. And I wanted to be about changing that, particularly also looking at the power dynamics. I think that we've made some gains and seeing how some foundations are leading boldly and differently and thinking about philanthropy, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done. It's very relational, and I think that everyone has the ability to be philanthropic, whether you're given $5 or $500 million. And I think that all of that has value. And I think that on the side of being able to create generational wealth and build that is something that we need to lean in more and support, and give up the power in some respects around those who are around the table, and being able to open the table to those who you don't traditionally see, particularly around being able to give up resources.
Absolutely. I wanted to get to the quote that begins your chapter. It says, "Let nothing dim the light that shines from within," by Dr. Maya Angelou. Why does that quote resonate with you so much?
I was so thrilled to see that quote because I think that it fits perfectly, and that we all have our own divine light that shines within. And it goes back to, again, that we all come into this world with purpose, and that we are enough. And, as we are made to be, and we're to live out that. So I think that quote is a reminder to just be able to tap into our own individual light.
Well, I can definitely tell you that lessons are being learned, especially within your chapter, and
Yes.
Appreciate your service.
I really appreciate
to
it.
the nonprofit world.
I do want to say that just this week, I had someone reach out to me from Missouri who read the chapter, bought the book, and read the chapter, read our anthology, A White Ally in the Nonprofit Sector. And I think that's a testament, for her to be able to reach out and say, I see you. The stories resonated, and to be able to amplify that is the whole purpose of the book.
Exactly. I think one thing that Erica had mentioned was about that safe space, right?
Yes.
And that safe space, again, I think I said, could create the blueprint for everybody else to see, we can do this too. And
That's
create
right.
safe spaces for other people in this world.
That's right.
Be that you're Black woman or not.
That's right.
It's just creating that support system. So.
That's right.
All right, Severina Ware, such a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for coming to talk about your chapter in I Said What I Said. I want to start actually with the question I asked you before we even got started with the acronym that you have behind your name, CVA. Can you tell me what that means and how that is related to the nonprofit world?
Yes, so my CVA is a certified volunteer administrator. So I am one of 3,000 individuals. We're actually about to hit 3,000 individuals we have a code of ethics, and we are highly experienced in volunteer management, volunteer engagement, volunteer recruitment, and all of that good stuff.
And so naturally that leads you into a world of service.
Yes.
So just tell me, number one, how you even got started in philanthropy, or what made you say, outside of the job, this is now a personal venture for me.
So philanthropy service really started in high school. I was an avid volunteer when it came to Special Olympics. So when I decided to go ahead and move into my college career, I was like, you know what? Nonprofit management, community resource management sounds like the wheelhouse that I need to be in. And from there, it has just grown into my expertise, and I've really found myself there.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So walk me through these 3 lessons that you had within your chapter.
So
Yes.
during my time in the cohort, it was a very transformative period of my life, professionally and personally, but more so professionally, where I really had to tap into believing in myself and seeing myself as an expert in my field. I had so many different people tell me oh my gosh, you're really skilled at that. And I would take that, but I never really sat with it and let it resonate with me. So these 3 lessons really kind of catapulted me in that transformation period where I was like, you know what? I'm an expert at what I do. I know what I need to do. I've got a network of individuals that I can lean on, and it helped me really prove my point and start making very, very high level power moves to really find myself and be the subject matter expert that I am.
I noticed that you bring up your family quite often as well in your book, and I understand family is the foundation of who we are in most cases, but I mean, you get right into it talking about your mom. Just can you tell me the importance of your family's influence on your philanthropic journey?
I would not be the person that I am today without my family. We were driven on service, serving in church, serving in together as a family in different avenues. So without my mom, my siblings, and my dad, especially my dad was the person who always told me, you can do whatever you set your mind to. So having that family foundation that would lift me up and support me on any of my endeavors was critical. So when I was starting to write my chapter, I knew that I was going to incorporate them in some way. And naturally it would be with my mom telling me to check my tone.
And this was like, even though you're talking about standing firm, you know, and everything, you're very conversational. It's almost like talking to a homegirl, like within your chapters.
Yes.
And it almost felt like, sis, like chill, know yourself. So it's like, I really appreciate that. I wanted to get into the quote that starts your chapter off by the amazing Stacey Abrams, or at least I think she's amazing. It says, names matter, labels matter. We should always pursue the highest title available and fight for the labels that reflect our clout.
Prior to the cohort, my name is Severina Ware, but my friends and my close friends, the people that have known me my entire life, have always called me Sevy. And because Severina doesn't roll off the tongue as easily as other names, I would quickly offer people in professional settings my nickname of Sevy as a consolation prize. Oh, don't worry, don't even try, just call me Sevy. And for years in professional settings, people would refer to me as Sevy. This cohort really had me take that power back to where when I walk in rooms, you're going to say my name. You're going to really own that, and if you can pronounce all of these other hard names, you can say Severina. It's exactly how it's spelled. Names matter, labels matter, my name is my power, and I'm standing in it.
Yasmin Lockett, also known as Yaga.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for talking to us about I Said What I Said and your input into the book. So I think I start asking everybody, how did you even get into the world of philanthropy? Why do you think it's important to serve?
You know, I was serving before I knew I was serving. Grew up dancing my whole life. And when I had the opportunity to join Dallas Black Dance Theater's second pre-professional company back then, it took me to another level of serving, should I say. Being on the stage and blessing so many aspiring dancers or just individuals who don't possess the talent or aspire to have the talent. And I remember back then at Dallas Black Dance Theater, they prided the second company on all having degrees. So at the end of every show, we would all have to step forward, you know, in first position and say, I am Yasmin Lockett, and I have a degree in bachelor's degree in dance performance from Brunel University. And we would do Q&A with all the people in the audience, and I didn't know back then it was serving. And so when they gave me the baton to lead outreach and community engagement under the realm of Dallas Black Dance Theater, with no direction, I just pulled on the strengths that I knew of being a talent server in this space, and offering that talent back to individuals, whether they were wanting to go in that direction or not. But my passion turned into my purpose for this work.
And it's amazing you worked with another great nonprofit within this city. But you're actually from Atlanta originally, and then came to Dallas. So is there any influence from Atlanta of service that you've seen, like growing up and everything like that? Or is it family based? Can you talk about that?
It's a bit of both. If I had have known back then what I know now, I think my family and I, we would have saved ourselves a lot of frustration, struggle and challenges. My parents paid out of pocket for everything that they offered to me, dance classes, even school. We did not navigate the resources that were available. We also didn't know because we were considered an average middle class family. So the typical nonprofits or organizations that go around and work in underserved communities, they weren't afforded to us. Growing up military, you would think I had a more lavish life, but I didn't. And in this space that I have now, if I had have known where the Boys and Girls Clubs were, or the YMCAs, or how to apply for this program or get this scholarship, we would have been able to save money, resources, time, and we would have been able to enjoy our life a little bit differently. I would have enjoyed or taken heed more to the opportunities that were afforded to me back then. So it is a bit of both. What I had to endure growing up, wanting to enjoy all the luxuries of extracurricular activities outside of school and even extracurricular activities in school. My parents paid for it all. And now that I know what it looks like to have help in that space and to be able to help other people in that space, why not do the work?
Absolutely. To that point, you actually, reading your chapter, you kind of, for me, it was like a roller coaster of you understanding the world that you were in, talking about everything from the costs of burgers to relating to or not really liking middle class, upper middle class kids. So when you had the opportunity to be a part of this, why did you jump on it like the way you did?
I mean, I'd never heard of this opportunity, this cohort, Black Women in Nonprofit Leadership. I was even honored to be considered a potential candidate. I don't even think of my role as leadership before entering into this space. And once it became available, and even just the assessment in the application to be considered, I learned a lot about myself and what I was doing even at that point. And then I thought to myself, I need this. I need this. At the time, I wasn't even in a situation where I was responding to white leadership. I was actually blindsided by a new change within the organization that I was serving in at the time. And my leadership, my direct report was actually a Black woman. And if I could give her this book right now and force her to read it, we'd probably have a completely different relationship to this day.
Yeah. But I think that speaks volumes to why this book is so necessary, right? So let's just send her a free copy and see what happens.
Okay, anonymously.
Yeah,
Don't put my name on there.
Exactly. So your quote at the top of the book, and every chapter has a quote at the top of the book. So the one that was chosen for you was by the Queen, Beyonce Knowles. Don't try to lessen yourself for the world. Let the world catch up to you. Why does that resonate with Yaya?
I mean, me and Beyonce, we go way back. I love her performance skills. She's great. No, but I mean, exactly what it says. You should not be lessening yourself for anything, for a title, for a position, to please someone, even to get what you want. That's something we often do and sometimes don't even realize it. The world does, the world moves nonstop. But if you try to lessen yourself for the world, you will always be behind because the world never stops. That's what I think about when I hear that quote. But at the end of the day, I'm a constant too. And when I think about where I am in life to this day, I mean, I'm a published author now. Never thought that I would be there. And there's so many things that we could sit here and talk about, and this interview will go until next November. But I had to realize in this journey, jumping into the cohort, writing my chapter, that I've spent too much time worrying about everybody else, what they're going to say, if I'm good enough for this, or if I should be making this transition, or even when I stopped dancing, I thought I was behind. But really I was moving forward. I was coming out, I said earlier, out of my passion that got me into this place and walking into my purpose. And because now I can see the greater purpose of what I'm supposed to be doing, I don't think about trying to catch up and lessen myself. I'm just moving.
Ms. Shane Woods, thank you for talking with Dallas Weekly about your chapter, and I said what I said. I just want to get right into it. First, tell me how you got into the world of service through philanthropy.
I had a chance to start my career in the 7th and 8th grade science realm of public education, which really is a partner with nonprofit and philanthropy in terms of we all have to give back to those communities, especially those public schools. So having a chance to work with Fort Worth ISD for over 17 years really allowed me to hone in on what is my passion. And it became science and getting young women, especially women of color, to understand that these STEM skills that they can utilize in any career are critical. Working on the north side of Fort Worth also let me know that I needed to help my brown and Hispanic girls understand that school goes beyond 8th grade. A lot of them were stopping, going home, and taking care of family. So after they had that conversation with me of no, there's more, and there's a high school up the hill, there's also colleges in Fort Worth that you can go to, and it doesn't mean that you're turning your back on your family, you're going to be able to add more value to your family. I got a chance to work with Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas to lead their 92-acre STEM camp, and it was one of those things that really was a dream come true. To be able to transform the curriculum there, to be able to bring kids who have never seen a tree, who thought we had planted 100 trees on acres, to say no, even Dallas has some nature, it has some environment, and also to show them what it looked like to have earth science as a career. What does it look like to go into physics? To be able to take that passion that they have, even if it's gaming, and say you can make money by developing that. And it can still be something that doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like it's awful to be an adult. So then getting a chance to interview and become an executive director for a national nonprofit just seemed like a logical path on that roadmap of being able to give back. Now, it's one of those things that as an executive director, I'm able to say that truly people's time, talent, and treasure is critical for the work that I do. Without people believing in the mission of Girls Start, without people using their skill sets to help us on a small but mighty staff of 22 to say, hey, I can help with marketing. I know you only have one person doing that, or I can help you with strategic planning. That's what I get a chance to do with my corporation job. It really is nice to have them not only help fund the dream, but also be a part of it.
That's amazing. Just like many women who wrote their chapters, you mentioned your family and their influence. By the way, I just have to mention that you're from Houston. So when you were growing up in Houston, how did your family, because you were talking about your grandparents, for instance, and just the life lessons that they gave you. So can you speak to that a little bit about how that influenced your service?
Of course, survey says that really it is the father in the house that helps determine a girl's trajectory in her career. It's one of those things that everyone seems to relish in. The mother believes in you, and so a lot of kids take that for granted. Of like, mom thinks I can be anything. She says I can be a president, sure. But once that male role model in their home starts saying, no, really, I see you as a scientist. I believe that that's what you can do. It really does allow them to kind of solidify that self-image, and especially that picture that they think of. And so getting a chance to be the granddaughter of the woodshop teacher, which is STEM in its most basic form, he used to always tell us that the tool has no idea who's holding it. So don't let how you show up in the world predict what you build. And so being able to take that kind of encouragement from my grandfather, my father being a machinist, it really was about that craft work and honoring those who really build the world around us, but also understanding that some thought goes behind that. I remember having to tutor my dad on trigonometry in high school because he had just started working on a contract with NASA, and that's what they needed him to know. And so for me to be able to show something that I loved, which was math, and help him and him ask for help as an adult, it was critical to know that we can all be lifelong learners, and it doesn't matter who the teacher is. So yet again, tying in education and getting a chance to give back and really find that passion that doesn't feel like I'm going to work every day. It's really what my family helped me understand, is that it's not an awful thing to go to work. It's not just about bills and mortgages and all that. It really is about what change are you making, what legacy can you leave.
The impact. Absolutely. Right. Sorry. I was just thinking how cool it was that all of y'all do scientific stuff like that, generation after generation. When you had the opportunity to write a chapter for this book and do something that, quite frankly, isn't done often, why did you jump on it? And what do you see in the future for yourself in nonprofit?
I love that you thought we had a choice in writing this chapter. So after we were told we're writing a chapter and we all had our freak out moment, I said, well, this is an assignment. I'm an A student. You give me an assignment, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna show out. When I look at the rubric, I don't go with what's just basic, I go all the way to what's high achieving. So it's one of those things that also, having lost my mother, I was like, how do I process this in a way that's healthy? How do I help other people process that? And I remember the passing of Stuart Scott, and it's a quote that I put in there in terms of how are you going to feel that, how are you going to run that dash between your born date and your end date? And so that really did resonate with me of how can us women do that best dash? How are we able to empower one another? And if they're not sure yet how to do that, in the chapter I mentioned shine in terms of you got to set that goal. You got to have a plan. You got to start the plan, initiate it, navigate all the no's you're going to encounter because somebody's going to say no somewhere. Even if it's just your card declining, that's still a no, but you just navigate through that. But most importantly, it's that E, it's that enjoy the entire trip. Learn from it. And so getting that chance to really be able to tell that story and how I've navigated the world. And as people are reading my chapter and reading all of our chapters, they're finding themselves in it. They're finding that mentor that they didn't know they needed. They're finding that those words that they can take into that next interview or that exit interview if it's time to move on. Everything is in that book. I have already had a chance to meet with 3 different people who at the end of the meeting were like, hey, I just want you to know I loved talking with you, and there's this book I really want to share with you. And I'm like, turn to chapter 19. That's me. And so it's already out in the world in the hands of those who need it the most. And I just cannot wait for those who don't know that this gift is coming for it to land in their hands.
It's amazing. And in closing, you just mentioned a quote, but I want to talk about the quote that starts your chapter. The quote is, I'm convinced that the women of the world, united without any regard for national or racial dimensions, can become a most powerful force for international peace and brotherhood. And that was by Coretta Scott King. Why does that resonate with you?
I really love it because Coretta Scott King actually embodies how I typically approach work. I don't mind allowing or being that support system of the person making that change. The way I do that with executive director as Girls Start is I get a chance to navigate the behind the scenes, and I am perfectly fine with that. But I also get a chance to put that forefront on the girls. And that is where we all started. We all started this world landing here as someone's daughter, someone's child. And so if I can empower the youngest of our generation, if I can get them set on a course, that power that they're going to generate, having been the mother of this powerful generation Z, I'm seeing that what we pour into them really does allow us to have that peek into the future of the power that they can yield. And they're going to go beyond just America. They're going to really reach a global impact. So I'm really excited about being able to say that the work that I hopefully put into that chapter allows those who are in other countries and beyond the language that I speak to really find themselves to say, this is how I can do this is how I can make a change, and how I can be a living and lasting ancestor.